What is the stupidest way you almost died? Went to go visit a friend in Gloucester, Mass in winter back in high school far from my home. I was planning on staying overnight at their house, but their mother, who I now know has mental health problems, wouldn't even let me in the house because the father wasn't home working a night shift. Friend said sorry bro and closed the door. Almost froze to death waiting outside in 10-degree F at night. A cab driver saw me slumped on a bench and woke me up. Let me get warm and drive around in the passenger seat while he picked up wasted people out on the town all night. When he finished his shift, he dropped me off at the train station and handed me $7 for the fare. Dude probably saved my life and I can't even remember his name. Every couple of years I hospitalize a college bro due to his hypothermic, wasted, and left for dead in a snowbank. Usually by his fellow brothers. A very specific and recurrent scenario. Dude, that kinda makes it sounds like you beat them up. Swam under a shipyard pier at night. Solid concrete above me and lost my sense of direction. Got lucky and found my way out. To add more detail, a friend and I were assault swimmers attacking a ship for a training exercise at night. We would swim from pier pylon to pylon underwater. Take a breath, go under, push off, and swim roughly 20 feet to the next pylon, surface and repeat. My mask broke, and I was doing it with my eyes closed due to having contacts at the time. One time I just kept swimming and felt like I missed the pylon. When I went to slowly broach the surface, I found myself under the concrete above. I had no idea the pier was even built like that. Put my hands up and oriented myself. It looked dark in all directions, but my gut told me to the right is where I came from. After that, I stayed on the surface. Cheers. Well, there's a new nightmare to add to my brain's encyclopedia of hell. I snorkeled too far out into the ocean, and it wasn't because it was a riptide. I just got distracted by pretty fish. Oh wow, this just reminded me of the one time I actually was afraid of imminent death. I was snorkeling with sea turtles in Taiwan and didn't notice I was getting too close to the coral shelf that made up the shore. There was one sandy inlet which you needed to use to get in and out. A big wave came and threw me on top of the sharp coral. I was entirely disoriented, and wave after wave was just smashing on me and jostling me, which could potentially get me stuck and drowned in any number of little crevices. After what was probably 30 seconds, but felt like 5 minutes, I managed to compose myself enough to start crawling away. I walked away with some scratches and a missing booty. I also accidentally left my passport in the bathroom of the visitor center immediately after. Ima blamed the trauma. Damn, you're lucky it wasn't fire coral. Drove on an interstate during a hurricane and watched all the cars around me get submerged. That must have been terrifying. The scariest moments of my life. I remember thinking of trying to do a U-turn across the median, but realizing the guardrail was there and there was no getting out. Stuck my head out the car window. BC, I wanted to see why dogs loved it. My grandpa didn't notice. Rolled up the window and I choked. He freaked out when he heard the cat-like noises, ironic, I was making while my neck was trying to squeeze through the small opening of the window, but kept raising the window in his panic. Eventually he got it, and I was left with a red mark on my neck and no closer to understanding dogs. Ever see the movie Hereditary? Yes, it definitely made me squirm way more. Being sleepy on the road. Don't. Find a spot and sleep a bit. This is absolutely the most terrifying thing to happen. I've dozed off a few times and woke up just before flying off road. Now I make sure if I'm too tired to drive, I immediately pull over on the side of the road and give myself a few minutes to rest, or call a friend and ask them to stay on the phone with you to keep you awake. I've only almost ever fallen asleep once. Highway hypnosis, on the other hand, has almost killed me once or twice. A few weeks ago I left work really late after a long shift and no sleep. Got all the way home and was like, crap, I forgot to do something and didn't want the morning crew to have to deal with it. So I drive back to work. Mind you, it's about 30 minutes each way and a straight line in the middle of cornfields. I eventually have stop at a stop sign to turn left. I saw the stop sign because it's the only red thing in my line of sight and I have my high beams on. I stared at the sign for about a minute. and only realized its existence about 15 seconds before I had to stop, going 70 miles per hour. I barely stopped in time. Luckily, if I had blown it, I would have been fine, since no one is in the road at 2 AM, where I work/live. I was at a water park in Texas with one of those super tall, straight down slides. They had multiple signs saying things like, "Do not push off before sliding down." Me being an 18-year-old idiot and wanting to race my friend, I decided to push off. That extra push started my slow motion, airborne flight over the slide. I was then staring 100 foot down at concrete and my other friend who had his jaw open. What felt like minutes later, I smacked back down onto the slide and made my way down to the bottom. Thank God for the engineers that planned for suicidal idiots like myself. Bro, they don't pay engineers to design water slides in Texas. They just do whatever until someone dies. Didn't a young boy die on a Skletterban slide there a few years ago? I remember hearing gruesome things. Grown adult and choked on mozzarella cheese. Was only alone for 20 minutes. Can't imagine the obituary. When I was 15, I was so worried about choking to death that I'd cry if I had to be home alone. You just didn't want to go with not eating anything until someone came home? I walked into a backroom freezer of a grocery store. The huge door was designed to close automatically. I knew this and went in and did what I was there to do. After 30 seconds, I couldn't catch my breath. I thought maybe I was just working too hard, so I stopped and took several huge breaths, but nothing. I felt like I was drowning out of water. I had to move as quickly as I could back outside of the freezer and fell to my knees gasping when I got out. It was only afterwards I realized for some dumb reason someone kept open dry ice in a cart inside of the freezer. Dry ice removes oxygen out of the air in enclosed spaces. I almost died from lack of oxygen and would have been an icicle when they found me. Don't mess with dry ice. Who was the severely irresponsible dip crap that left open a case of dry ice in an enclosed area? Did someone get fired for that? Because that sounds like something you get fired over. Dude, I did one of those home delivery type meals recently to try it out. They send everything frozen and this was the first time I'd gotten it. I open up the box, reach in to take this massive ice pack off of the food, and realize my fingers are burning. They had a giant block of dry ice in there that had busted out of the plastic protector, and I grabbed that directly for as long as it took to get a good grip and lift it out. No freaking warnings anywhere besides on the ripped up bag itself. While wasted, I sat down outside to rest for a moment on a freezing cold winter's night. Fortunately, a passerby noticed me and encouraged me to get inside. I figure I was probably there dozing for several minutes. My boss's friend died that way last winter. Passed out in the alley behind the bar. Froze to death. Read in this comment section, freezing to death seems the most common stupid way to die. Came very close, about 2 inches, to backing into a warehouse rack full of 2-ton coils of sheet metal when I didn't realize that my forklift was in reverse. That'd do it. I was in 2nd or 3rd grade. I was getting off the school bus and was walking around to the other side to my driveway. Suddenly the bus driver hits the horn, scared the hell out of me, and I stopped at the edge of the front of a bus and a dump truck good speeding around. I don't know if the dump truck driver didn't see the lights of the bus or whatever, but that driver made a dumb mistake that could have cost me my life. Thinking about it, my older sister was up at our driveway waiting for me. Probably would have messed her up for life. After that, the school district changed bus routes to avoid students having to cross the road to get on or off the bus. The amount of people I see speed by stopped school buses astounds me. Just watched it happen the other day too. Disappointing and baffling. My husband did it once and I lost my mind. He spent all of his life in a large city and never learned school bus rules in driver's ed because they only had city buses. We moved to the country and he had no idea you were supposed to stop. Thought the flashing red lights were just like hazard lights on a car and it meant to use caution. Now he knows, but FFS, you'd think all driver's tests would require you to know those rules. Choked on a lifesaver. I choked on a lifesaver too. My mom's solution was to pour burning hot water down my throat to try to melt it. That's honestly a good move, just the wrong temp. I'm Italian but have been living in the UK for 2 years. Guess who looked at the wrong side of the road while a bus was coming off? Every time I went back to Italy I risked my life for the same reason, by getting used to drive to the left and vice versa. In the US they teach us to look both ways before crossing the street. Finally, we excel in education of at least one topic. It's so ingrained in me at this point that I'll look both ways on one-way streets as well, which honestly has saved my ass more than once. Almost got my head squashed by a car due to a small pebble making me fall on the main road. Oh man, this reminds me. A dealership I worked at had 2-man teams for the lube rack. Well, I was a lube tech at the time. I was setting the lift on a full-sized pickup when my teammates started raising the lift. My head got caught between the lift and the frame. Thankfully someone saw me and screamed at him to stop. I was seconds from getting my head popped like a tomato. Damn bro. Lift safety is real. Had a teammate die in my company last year when a truck fell on him. I still get worried under anything heavy, but I couldn't imagine working under a lifted bus. I coughed, dislocated my C1-C2 vertebrae, and spent 6 months in a body halo. IDK, how close to death that counts, but be careful when you cough. I coughed and got a spinal CSF leak. Spent about a year in constant, unrelenting pain before I found a specialist who fixed me. What kind of specialist, if I may ask? I stuck my head in a random beaker to sniff something in chemical lab. I have been very good about wafting since. One time I was making ghost pepper hot sauce, my first time doing it, and after blending everything I stuck my whole face into the blender to get a good smell and almost passed out from the pepper gas attack that destroyed my face and lungs. OMG, my friend's mom was making that stuff in their house. Also their first time, and when I walked, my eyes started watering. I can't imagine how bad a close sniff would have been. I didn't look before I crossed the street. Walked backwards while talking to my friend, got hit by a van. I wasn't wearing my medic alert bracelet to warn the paramedics and hospital that I'm allergic to Demoral because it looks dumb and gets caught on my backpack. Besides, what are the chances I'd ever be given that? The chances, it turns out, are pretty good if you get hit by a van going full speed hard enough to nearly rip your foot off at the ankle. I survived 7 surgeries to patch me back up, was comatose for a little bit, had some blood transfusions, massive amounts of physiotherapy. Look both ways and wear your medic alerts, folks. I'm also deathly allergic to Demerol, immediate anaphylaxis, and it never even occurred to me to own a medical alert bracelet. I'd also recommend keeping a card in your wallet next to your ID. In case you're unconscious, they'll look for your ID and see it. If you're deathly allergic to anything, you should have that info in at least one location on your person in case of an emergency. I'm an EMT. I almost drowned in the sea as a kid. A current pushed me away from the shore. Lifeguards saved me and were slapping my face. I thought it was a punishment, but they were resuscitating me. I'm sorry, you just made me giggle at the idea of lifeguards slapping people for stupid mistakes. Unplugging the washing machine with wet hands. My hand slipped onto the prongs while they were still partially in the outlet, and I think my heart stopped for a second before I yanked the plug free. Definitely do not recommend. I remember plugging in a phone charger in the car once. The outlet was in the backseat, so I couldn't see what I was doing. Hand slipped off the brick onto the prong in my phone. In my other hand, got yeeted into the dash from the shock. This happened to me when I was a kid and now I'm an electrician. Cut my inner ankle on a glass cup. For those who don't know, an artery is there, and I literally sliced through it. Almost bled out. Thankfully didn't though. My horse cut that same artery while he was being shod. He had a nail sticking out of the side of his hoof. The farrier hadn't crimped it down, and he took one step sideways and cut the artery on the opposite leg. He almost bled out before I got it stopped about 10 minutes later. Huge amounts of blood gushing everywhere, and I'm holding onto the foot of a 1,000-pound animal that's getting wobbly and that I love dearly. It was really terrifying. How did you get the bleeding to stop? What did you do next? God, I completely forgot. When I was like 14 or 15, I found out about Breathe Play from some dumb adult comedy show we shouldn't have been watching. I was curious and dumb, so when I went to bed that night I stuck my head inside my pillowcase with the pillow over my face and tied it on tightly with a bathrobe cord. Of course my dumb little idiot self couldn't get it untied again. I freaked out and was just going nuts, pulling on any random bit of cord I could get my fingers into, trying to pull the pillow off, but all I was doing was compressing the knots down tighter. I remember feeling really dizzy and rapidly seesawing between desperately sucking in hot wet breaths of carbon dioxide and then just going completely still and feeling like I didn't need to breathe anymore, like I could just lie there peacefully, then suddenly going back to gasping for air again. Somehow I eventually wiggled enough slack out of the cord to be able to get one of the loops up over my chin so I could pull the pillow away from my mouth, and all I could do for a few minutes was just lay there and breathe. I will never forget how cold and wonderful that first breath of proper air was. Dumb little crap. Yes, this is quite dumb. And yes, sounds like you almost died. Glad you didn't. Waited too long to go to the hospital. Pre-COVID, I thought I just had a cold. Husband said, go to the doctor. I said no. 3 days later, still not great. Husband said, go to urgent care. I said I will, if I don't feel better tomorrow. Next day, I tell husband, I need to go to the a collapsed lung due to pneumonia. 3 days in hospital plus breathing issues for the next year. Moral, listen to your spouse. And yeah, got a whole lot of I told you so-s. Deserved every one of them. That was me last year. Pre-COVID, I wasn't listening to my body. Double lung pneumonia. A doctor said 2 more days and maybe bad road. Hospital stay. Lots of antibiotics. Took me 9 months to get my lungs back in order. Bummer. I was at Lake Bled in Slovenia and thought I could easily swim the distance between the shore and the island in the middle with a church on it. Boy was I wrong. About halfway I started getting exhausted and had trouble staying afloat. Then my body kicked into survival mode, the adrenaline started pumping, and I Michael Phelps the rest of the way to the island. I ended up paying €5 to have a boat take me back to shore after that harrowing experience. Holy heck. Same thing happened to me. I got a cramp halfway and honestly thought this was my way out. Luckily I saw some people from my hostel in those boats and I jumped in, just awoken a suppressed memory. You had the same experience in the same lake? When I was a kid, I dipped my toes into a flooded creek to see how it felt. Proceeded to get sucked into said creek and nearly washed away. Thankfully, the creek had some overgrown areas and I was able to cling to a tree in the middle of the floodwater and scream for help. This happened directly behind my house. So my dog heard me, alerted my dad, and my dad managed to rescue me. What makes this extra stupid was that I was trying to prevent my friend at the time from doing the same thing. He wanted to surf down the creek on a snow sled. I was following him, telling him it was a bad idea, and then like a dumbass, I ended up in the creek instead. He also gave me crap afterwards for ruining his stunt. Kids are stupid, I guess. Oh wow, what a good dog. Yeah, she was a border collie. One of the best pets I ever had. I miss her. Had experience snowboarding and went with some friends up a Black Diamond run. I was scared to fall, so I would squat, so I would have less distance to fall. The person reading this laughing so far knows this makes you go faster. So in a hoe, I took a tumble worse than Scarlet while going full speed and felt lightness, except my hand caught what I thought was a branch. When the snow cleared, my hand was wrapped up in a red safety net, and I was hanging about 4 stories off the mountain. That was the most committed pull-up of my life. Great times. Depending on much loose snow there was, you might have survived it. I once took a 2-story fall into deep powder at 14, and walked away without a single bruise. I willingly jumped off a 2-story rock this year lol, but for rails, if you don't know it's there, you can get seriously hurt just off way smaller things. Choked on a small potato at the Pizza Hut salad bar. Completely lodged in my throat. I raced to the loo and shoved my fingers down my throat and it popped out. Walked back to my table and finished my salad. People running to the bathroom or an uninhabited area when they are choking is surprisingly common and increases your risk of dying extraordinary. You are very lucky that you were able to get it out yourself. Yes, let us reiterate, do not geo into a bathroom if you are choking. I don't give a frick if it is embarrassing. Find people. I was riding my bike to either the school or the supermarket. I can't remember. I was maybe like 12 over 13 years old. In my town you can't really ride a bike on the street, so I had to use the sidewalk. On my way I had to ride across a bus stop with a ton of people just blocking the way for me and my bike. So I decided to hop onto the street and up onto the sidewalk again later. Those people were blocking my view, so I didn't see a bus coming my way. I just barely hopped onto the sidewalk and the bus missed me by a few centimeters after that. I didn't really understand what happened. A few hours later it hit me that this could have ended rather bad for me. Thought this story had a very different ending for a second. There. How very Final Destination. Taking apart a dryer completely to clean it out and get it running smoothly again. Dropped a screwdriver onto an exposed wire. Huge Arkansas sound. I had left it plugged in up until I realized the incredibly smooth-brained move I had pulled. In a similar vein, I was helping my aunt with her dryer because the motor wouldn't start. I had the access panel pulled from the base of the machine and I'm flat on my stomach on the damp concrete basement floor. Before I reach in to unhook some terminals I ask my aunt, is it unplugged? Yeah. 60 Hz muscle spasms carry me a few inches across the floor while flashes of light in my vision accompany a ringing in my ears I'll never forget. When I regain my senses and my composure, I ask her, are you sure it's unplugged? Oh, wait. Frick. Never again will I trust someone else's lockout. Rule number 1 of appliance maintenance and anything remotely related to electricity is that you assume it's still plugged in unless you have been the one to unplug it / check. I was at a Pink Floyd concert at the old Tampa Stadium and was going to get a drink. I got crushed against a wall at the bottom of a stairway when a rush of people came up the breezeway. I couldn't move or breathe. Probably 100 or more people in a logjam. I'm not a big person. Started to panic. Looked up and a guy looked over the rail above me. He started yelling to me to reach for his hand. He leaned way over and grabbed my hand and pulled me up like 8 or 9 feet and over the rail. Took a few minutes to get a breath. He had the security guy get the medic to check me over. Freaky close to a very bad ending. One of my mom's friend's daughter died like that in a concert. My mom wouldn't let me attend one before I was 18. I still went to a couple, but that accident was always in the back of my mind. Crazy. When me and my buddies go to shows we always make it a point to look out for little people. People underestimate how extremely strong crowds are. Going down the wooden stairs at my parents' house wearing socks. Slipped on the last step and banged my head on the wall. Woke up roughly 3 hours later with Doggo by my side desperately licking my ear. Never told my parents. That's at B. Tell your neurologist about it if you ever see one. Yeah, nausea, vomiting, memory loss, loss of depth perception, blurry vision, the list goes on. Had a severe concussion in high school and took nearly 5 years for chronic headaches to stop. Can't even remember my last one now. Every night when I plug in my Chevy Bolt in my garage to charge, I wonder if I'm going to wake up in the morning. Is it dangerous to plug in a Chevy Bolt or something? There's a recall right now. The batteries have been known to catch on fire or something.